Hey guys, it's Will. Hopefully you're having a great day today. In this video, I want to talk with you about the economic state of the world. Hopefully you guys are having a good day today. For those of you guys that haven't been on the channel before, my name is Will. Cover how to invest in AI, in tech, and economics, as well as the best deals in the stock market, as well as digital assets like crypto, how you can potentially invest in them. One thing that I found really funny about this whole narrative, right, on when we had changes in the direction of the stock market as of recently, and we've seen it really push up, and we've seen it go crazy for the past few weeks. And after that, I mean, what are the reasons why we have that? I think the first thing that we have to see is that a lot of people are worried about the dollar and worried about its security. And I would say that there's a few things that we could get ready for. And to be honest, I don't even know if it's something a lot of people are thinking about. But we see a massive amount of money going into crypto from the main markets, and more of validity being seen in Bitcoin, for example, and a lot of money pouring into it from big institutions, from retail investors, from pretty much everybody. You have companies like Tesla that are holding a large portion of Bitcoin. You have new ETFs that are coming out that are holding a large portion of it. And it's kind of interesting because some people are saying, like, I'm so worried about the dollar, like what's going to happen to the dollar? What if everybody is like on crypto, and like what happens to the people that are still relying on the dollar? And like, well, what could we see with home prices and things like that? And those are really interesting kind of topics, right? Because a lot of times people in other countries make money and immediately they turn it into dollars because it's a store of value. And the thing is a lot of people actually have trouble turning it into dollars. And also, the dollar itself has had a considerable amount of inflation over the past few years. And there's a lot of uncertainty around the government, right? You have Elon coming in, you have Department of Government Efficiency, you have new president. We're talking less regulation. We're talking about going straight to the Federal Reserve, and now there's questions to Powell if he's going to resign, and then what that would mean, and why do we have the Federal Reserve, and what if we have changes in the amendment or things like that? Like those are all questions, right? And what if we change this in the government? Well, in order to really understand the economics, like of, for example, the housing market, or just let's say the dollar as a whole, it's really good to look at the founders of the United States as the first kind of wave of founders. And then we kind of had a second wave, and then now we're on what I believe is a third wave of kind of like founders, right? And so the first wave, you had like Thomas Jefferson, you had Benjamin Franklin, you had George Washington, and you had John Adams, and all of these great founders that came up with the Declaration of Independence, which formed the United States of America, and ultimately, formed the government as a whole. And they introduced things like public libraries and taxes and things that support the states as a whole, and the different hierarchies of how even if the government's going crazy, states can make their own laws as well, and then counties can make there's a whole government. Awesome, amazing thing that the founders created, right? Which is an amazing United States. That's how I see it. But after that, we've gone from like gold or whatever it was, seashells, to eventually getting up to gold, and then eventually getting to what is the dollar. And something really interesting. So that was kind of the first wave of founders. the second wave of founders came, and their objective was to preserve their wealth and make dollars a solid store of value. So let me explain. I don't know if you guys know, but there is this book called Jekyll Island, and it talks about how J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller, among others, basically met. I think it maybe the Vanderbilts, and they met and they discussed how they could secure their wealth for generations to come and how they could preserve their wealth. And there was things like trusts, but they weren't fully developed. And also the US dollar was something that there's the Great Depression, there's a lot of volatility, there's, maybe gold is going to be the main thing that people do. There's a lot of uncertainty. And they said, look, we are steel magnets. We are, massive financial institutions in JP Morgan and Rockefeller and what have you. And they said, how can we preserve our money so that it stays? And they said, we need to be able to control the money, and we have to back it by something so that it will hold its value for many, many, many years. And this is kind of what also made United States such a powerhouse. And so they met, and they can't make a company that's called the government of money, because it's been illegal. It was illegal. It's still illegal to make any corporation or any business that has the word government in it. So I don't know if you know that, but you can't make a company that has the word government in it. You can't name your company. And so they created something called the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve, it's meant to sound like government. It's meant to be something that's going to improve the United States and help control the US dollar to preserve the wealth of the United States. And that's the first step. So they had to create the Federal Reserve, and they said they came with this plan, and they came up with the Federal Reserve. They came up with what was, I think it's like the Federal Education System or something like that. I don't know the exact, but they had to use the word, I think it was federal. And they came up with the school system. And they're like, if we create a school system, how can we back this dollar? It has to be backed by work. Right now, they were asking themselves, why is gold valuable? Okay, so we'll get back to the Federal Reserve, but they said gold is valuable because you have to go and you have to mine it. It's hard to get. It's not easy to obtain. It takes a lot of work. Silver, a little bit easier to get. Copper, easier to get. So the difference is in their price and how much work is backed to get that asset. So they said, this is based on our United States dollar. We have to back this dollar with work. And how can we do that? We get people to become engineers, to become workers, to become scientists and people that progress. And we need to create something that will mass produce very, very productive humans, essentially. And this will secure the dollar because we will have it backed by work, and we will have people that are really believing in the United States, like doing the Star Spangled Banner. You have everything that you do at school to believe, in the United States. And we have to create this United States school system. And so people also become military out of this, and we'll have a greater military. We'll have more workers, and it will start from a very young age, and they will work to make this dollar, and the dollar ultimately will be backed by their work. So they were kind of another set of founders, and by doing those things, there's some side of it where it's like it's evil. It's the creating the system of people that work for money, and that's all they do. But I don't think that that is the only thing. I think that there was an intention for them to preserve their wealth. I mean, they created the Federal Reserve, and they came up with all these organizations that would sound beneficial for the governments to partner with. And that once that partnership takes place, it would be so elusive that you wouldn't be able to tell that they were even not federal or not part of the government. And so they were able to complete this deal, and they were able to make it happen. It was JP Morgan, Rockefeller, among others. And they were able to back the dollar with more security by backing it with greater workforce, greater schooling system, infrastructure, and military. And that's what was one of the reasons why the US dollar has remained strong for so long. Those founders, I think, coupled with the constitution of the first founders, and then those founders going, and they weren't obviously founders, but you get what I'm saying. They further established the preservation of the government of the United States in a way, or of the dollar, of its value. And so now we're getting to a point where we have these new founders. We have these founders that are Elon, that are Vivek, and I mean, obviously we have Trump as well. But you have all these new players that are really big, right? And they all have tremendous influence, and they want to do some reform in a way. And so you might ask, what would their motivations to be? What would their motivations be? I like to think that the motivations of that second wave of founders, I like to think, was to preserve their wealth, to ensure the success over many years. So then with these new founders, I think that the intention is probably, I'd like to think that it's also a similar intention, that it's to preserve the powerhouse of what has been built, and to preserve the wealth and increase the wealth of the people that are a part of this currency, of this US dollar. Now, if they shift and they decide to create a US dollar that's digital or what have you, there could be tremendous change because again, we talked about how people work and go into school so they can work, so they can make money in the US dollars, and how people in, say, Argentina or somewhere else, they work and they make pesos and then they turn it into US dollars. And it's because of the US dollar and how it's sold. And so, and how it's backed. And so when you have something, so now we have these digital assets that are coming about in the world, and a large portion, trillions of dollars, are going into these digital assets, and they are backed by maybe not the work. It could be backed by the work. There's some, like Bitcoin, you have to mine, for example, to go get Bitcoin. But you also have it backed by trust, essentially. And so without trust, there is, difficulty in believing in something, right? You don't have trust, so you don't believe in it. If you don't believe in it, then it won't, to its greatest ability, be, right? Believe. For it to be, it has to be lived and be used and be believed in. And so in order for that US dollar to stay strong, or any currency or any asset, it has to be believed in and trusted by people. And so when you have something like, COVID come along, or any massive change in the world, obviously that can change the trust. And people question a lot of things because of the massive change, and they're saying, why is this happening, and how come this, like, and maybe there could be parties that are going to get blamed and things like this. And you have a lot of countries that a lot of citizens says, hey, I just can't trust this currency the way that things are going in the world. I feel like I can trust the US currency, so they convert to US dollar. And so what happens when, so that's why, we have to see, I think the current state is, it's very interesting that we have this new wave of founders and how they might go about handling things. And if they handle things well, that things would stay stabilized and continue for prosperity and freedom and growth. And if they don't handle things well, and they do something that would break trust with the mass majority of people that use the US dollar, then they're going to go to a place where they feel they can trust it, and they can trust it for a very long time. And this is why a lot of Bitcoin extremists or maximalists, like Michael Saylor, for example, that has the company MicroStrategy that basically invests billions of dollars, believe they're the largest holder, second largest holder in Bitcoin. And the reason why, and I'm not 100% sure, but I know that they are purchasing billions of dollars just like quarter over quarter in Bitcoin. And the reason why they do that, and they're not purchasing something like, let's say Solana or Tezos or Dogecoin or what have you, is because they're saying this Bitcoin here, it doesn't have a known governance. So if it doesn't have a governance, then it's trustless. There's no debates on if it can be trusted or not trusted, except for if there was a, it's fully digital. So if there was a lack of digital integrity that the infrastructure could hold, and if it didn't, then obviously, like there's certain things that they evaluate, on the trust. And so the trust side of things is kind of what it comes down to. And they're saying if there's not a government, if there's not anything backing it other than trust, then it becomes a pure play. It can't be manipulated, or it can't be whatever it has or whatever they do, that it's not governed. It's not going to change per se. There's things that could happen, that could impact it, that it could change. And that's when you have to say, is the power going to be on? And you might say, okay, yeah, it's going to be on it, or maybe not, or maybe your other concern is something else. So a lot of times the reason that people trust the US dollar, for example, is because that it's covered by, for example, the military or the infrastructure, the roads, the massive highways, the things that have been built in the United States, or the people that are promising to grow the land and that are working and innovating. And it's backed more by, that promise of the work and what's coming to the future, that it's bright, that the US dollar retains value. And if it's like, hey, I don't know if it's so bright, I don't know if I trust that the US is going in a great direction, like, for example, 2020 to 2022 across the entire world, you have people saying, well, I don't know, and what assets continue to grow a lot, the things that are an alternative. I think the current economic state would be that we wouldn't see complete and total adoption of crypto and an abandonment of the dollar. I wouldn't see that, because I would see it as an alternative asset. And it could be similar to that of gold. And if you think about crypto in terms of gold, if you think about crypto as there is crypto, Bitcoin is gold, and other cryptos are companies or materials, like maybe Solana, for example, is a nice car that you hold and you can trade it. It's not as valuable as gold, and it's probably easier to move around. You can just take it somewhere and give it to somebody. and send it very quickly, and certain things are easier to move. As assets, like dollar bills are easier, and gold is hard. It takes like more work. You gotta like pick up a big thing of gold. Same thing with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's slow. You can't really do a lot with it other than just hold it. There's not like smart contracts. Whereas other things, you might have it and you can improve it and you can back it by work. Like you might buy a piece of real estate and you might fix it up and you might make it nicer and it becomes more valuable. And same thing is true for like a crypto. You might start a crypto from zero and then attach it to a company or a brand or a person that's bringing value to the world. And then the value of the crypto will grow based on the trust in that person. And so I think that as long as there's a good intention, right? What does it say on the dollar or on any piece of any coin from the United States? It says, "In God we trust." I think it's so important that we trust if we want, that we can trust, not that we have to or that we should blindly, but that we can trust, because if you can, then you have what is something you can rely on, and your money will go to you. People will multiply and put focus on things that they know will grow or not be energy that is lost. So I think that's really important to think about in the current state. And those are kind of the things. One thing that was interesting was the change in real estate. I was looking at an article. It was like BlackRock and a few other companies that were massive purchasers of real estate, and that they had purchased, I want to say it was like 60% of the homes that they were purchasing were smaller homes that they wanted to rent out. That would be something more like a millennial that needs to access a smaller home that maybe they wouldn't be able to buy. And they were focusing less on huge developments, but more on like smaller, single family homes, which was interesting because when you have big companies, right, they're chasing money and profits. And so while they're chasing that, there is a really key thing that we have to think about is that if we saw the US dollar value start inflating a ton, okay, then stocks would most likely become very, very valuable, right? It would be like, not valuable, but in terms of US dollar, they'd be worth a lot, which would be this reverse market crash that we've talked about, a melt up, if you will, that you may have heard of. And so if that were to happen, it would be after that, you might say, oh, what's going to happen to real estate? Well, because you have big companies, like for example, BlackRock, or, just in general, like someone like myself, we want to buy real estate. And we buy real estate, and what happens is the demand is higher and the supply is very low. And so because the supply in real estate is pretty low, real estate prices most likely wouldn't be massively impacted, because if you think about it, what do people do when it's too expensive? They just go somewhere else. Like they go to, somewhere else, like, another place in the United States where it's cheaper. And that was kind of I think that was a theory from Dave Ramsey. They said that he wouldn't see real estate prices impacted if there was a melt up, a reverse market crash. They could be impacted, but it wouldn't be massive because the supply and the demand, because there's not. It's just like if you have a lot of houses that are owned, and some of them, like if they're all owned, then obviously they're going to be expensive to buy one. But if there's a bunch that are like vacant or empty, or a bunch of people selling, it's going to be, more, it's going to be cheap, right? So the market should stay steady in real estate. That's a tricky one. I'd like to dive deeper into that one. But yeah, that's the way that I see it. And hopefully this has been valuable for you guys. I think that there's a lot of amazing changes. If you want to stay up to date, subscribe, hit that like button down below. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you want to watch me trade assets like stocks or crypto at market open, I launched a company called Stockmate, and it's that second link down below if you want to watch me trade assets live each morning. Aside from that, I have a token I created a couple years ago. I haven't assigned it to a market, but I have this whole white paper. It's on the Solana blockchain, and I airdrop it to people on my email list. That's something you might be interested in. Make sure to click that first link down below. I think there's a free guide that you can claim. Maybe you won't use the guide, but if you claim it, then you can at least get access to future airdrops for the token. They will be backed by work. It'll be backed by my work and my company and what I do. And that's how it'll increase in value. And it's not going to be valuable if you don't trust me. Basically, the whole story of this video. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate you all. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.